different mentally. And what we do is we work with companies to establish their mental health programs, and also individuals to do virtual counseling, online counseling. So that we have launched 2 months ago. And we also have an e-commerce store for dog products. So very varied startups, but both very exciting. So that's me.
That's pretty cool. So an e-commerce store for dog products.
Yes. So I sell counseling sessions and also dog food. So you can choose what you want, Adrian.
They're very aligned. They're very aligned, actually. I mean, dogs are very good for mental health.
Exactly, so, right? So,
yeah.
And that actually that makes me think, Rudi, don't let me forget. Let's connect after this, because I have a buddy actually in Chicago who owns, he does some tech stuff in the dog space as well. And I didn't really put two and two together until I was just listening to you right now. So that's actually really interesting. So
sure.
We'll actually go on, and I'll let Erica Aquino as well talk a little bit about what she does and how she fits perfectly in this space too.
Ooh, okay. Hi, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening and good afternoon to whoever's listening. Okay, so what do? I do a number of things. So first of all, I have a craft brewery. We call it the most award-winning craft brewery in the Philippines because it is. I also do, that is for the fun side of me, the socializing side of me. Okay, and then I also do, like Twani over here, Erica Twani. I work in the education space as the executive director of a foundation that does STEAM education initiatives for underprivileged children. Okay, and that's been exciting because we try to add tech components to that as well. For instance, one of our programs is a feeding program that that incorporates tech, so donors can view the progress of their children, of the children that they sponsor through an online web app, and they can view the progress of their BMI, their attendance, and whether or not they actually got the meal that the donor sponsored. That's one. And then another, I also work closely with the local science ministry, science and tech ministry, so that we can basically scale our own initiatives as well, such as computer donation programs, etc., etc. And another thing that I do is I consult with startups. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've worked with several apps, and I'm starting a new one actually, centering around education. I'm also starting this one with Adrian because we believe that, you know, this is a world that's, you know, as many borders as there are, we still have so much in common. And what better way to connect than digitally, than with this Zoom, Facebook, etc. This is the age where the world is just so much smaller. It's so much easier to connect to everybody, right? So yeah, that's me, and this is how I fit into this conversation. Yeah, and shall we move on to our first question for the panelists?
Sure.
Okay. So Erica Twani. Okay. As an entrepreneur or a business person, how would you recognize opportunities and act on them?
That's a very interesting question, and I think that one of the things that we talk a lot about is how you, especially in this entrepreneurial field, is how do you develop the ability to think of a product and to think of what value you're going to deliver to your customer. And throughout the years, what I have found is that you can package the same product in different ways. So people buy it in different brand names or in different configuration, et cetera, et cetera. For example, right now, in this crisis, what we usually do is we provide professional development for teachers, right? But then since the beginning of the year, we came up already with 3 or 4 new products that does around the same thing. But because people are unaware, they're not used to this new COVID thing and how it works and how do we swallow that? How do we eat this? We configured the same product in different ways so people get attracted to the same thing, but listen to what they need. So it's very important for us to understand and be very keen to listen to the customer and see what the customer is saying. Usually what we usually do, especially when we're starting a new career, there are young people here starting their careers, we tend to stand in front of a customer and blah, 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 blah. We talk and talk and talk, but we never listen to the customer. And sometimes all they want, I mean, if you listen one little thing, you discover a new way to give your product, to sell your product. So for instance, right now, we created a whole new product, which is how do we coach teachers in this COVID-19 times to develop all the skills that children need at home to become autonomous learners, to develop habits of autonomous learners. So we created this whole product. But then talking to our customers, we found out that some of them, or most of them, already have a plan just because they need to. Okay, so a new product is what? I can consult with you and I can provide guidance for you to complete that plan and make sure it works in the way that so you start finding ways that you and your team are capable of doing it. You're packaging differently, and you're selling the same thing, but the customers foresees a greater value than you just have a little box of things and you try to sell that. So that's how you find new opportunities.
Okay, so something stood out to me, Twani, that really made me think, you know, you're talking about, actually 2 things stood out to me. You used the word value, right? Towards the end, you used the word value. And then in the beginning, you spoke about kind of repositioning yourself and rebranding the product. So do you think it's, you know, the way I look at it now is you had a great product already. However, now that we're in this situation where learning, working, teaching, et cetera, it needs to be online. So are you saying that your value of your product went up because of the situation? And if so, do you see that value plateauing, going higher, lower as we start to get out of this pandemic?
Entrepreneurship is not something that we're born for or born with. Anyone can be an entrepreneur. All you have to do is to pay attention to what's going on around you. Some of the people will just freeze themselves when crises come. Some other people will take advantage. And an entrepreneur, and if you want to go to this track, to this direction, an entrepreneur listens to what's going on. There will always be money to buy something. So all you have to do is to package your product in such a way, or services in such a way, that brings value to the customer. That's the beauty of successful entrepreneurs. They're not there for the money. They're there to bring value. And as long as you bring value, customers will buy from you.
Thank you.
For sure. I totally agree with that. It's not about, it's entrepreneurs solve problems. They do not make money. Money is an afterthought, I think. It sustains the business, and that's a really good insight, Twani.
Money is a consequence. Money is a consequence of your value, of the value.
Exactly.
You bring. The more value you bring, the more money you get.
Exactly. And your organization, Learning One-to-One Foundation, I believe it does. promotes, correct me if I'm wrong, it promotes autonomous learning to on a scalable level. And why, how did you recognize that opportunity for autonomous learning and to scale it?
Here's the thing.
Mhm.
So you see a lot of innovation going on all over the world in education, right? But they happen in this school in California, or that school in Singapore, or this school in China. So it's one school, right? And when I see that, I'm an engineer. I have a tech background. So when I see that, I said, why the hell we're not scaling this thing? You know, if it is so good, why can't we not scale this? And it was great decades that I spent working for Microsoft and Oracle. Like Rudi worked for Google and got ready for the position that I do believe that all of that was preparation for what I'm doing right now, because I learned to scale products and services worldwide. And that's why today I'm able to scale the product. And as a matter of fact, if you want to see how we're changing education, like in changing education with a pedagogy with a technical background, you can read in my upcoming book, Becoming Einstein's Teacher. It's coming at the end of this summer, more or less August. So you can read that, how we're transforming the way that students learn. The second thing is that we work with public education systems around the world, because we truly believe that the only way to reach to the people that really need is through public education. So we're working with them.
Okay, we have to connect after this, because as I mentioned, I do have an education foundation, and
Absolutely.
I really would like to know more. I really would like to know more about this, and I'd like to scale this here as well with a public education system of millions and millions of children. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Okay, so shall we travel to Singapore? Rudi, as an entrepreneur or business person, how do you recognize opportunities and act on them?
Okay, so for us in IO Labs, we are a startup factory. We can build anything that we want, right? So the space is too huge. The way we do it is we have established 4 criteria to determine which projects, ventures we will launch. So the first is size of opportunity, right? So is there a big growth momentum for something? People are willing to pay for it, and therefore you can build a business. The second is unfair advantage within the team. Do we know something about it? Is there something special, whether it's expertise or our network or the geography that we can tap into so that we can focus on that opportunity? Because there's so many opportunities. If you don't have an unfair advantage, then you probably will struggle in scaling it. The third is time to monetization. Because for us, a business, as an entrepreneur, cash is king, right? So if you cannot monetize, unless you're taking in a lot of external investment, which we can, but we don't want to at the start, then you really have to think about whether you are able to sell the product or the service to someone at the initial stage. So time to monetization is important to us. And the last is investment requirement. Meaning, I am a believer of the lean startup method, right? So start small, already sell at the start. So if there is lower investment requirement, that's a better opportunity space for us to take advantage of. So with these 4 criteria, we choose different spaces that we work on. And that is why we came about with at least the 2 ventures that we have launched in the past 2 months. But honestly, we've started with 30 spaces. We got it to 10 to 4 and now 2. And that journey in itself is actually exciting, right? Because if you have the thread of technology, right? Technology can solve a few of the problems in the world, and then use that with these opportunity spaces, and then create what is potentially a business model, that can work, and then go into market as fast as you could. Because I really believe entrepreneurship is not a lot of PowerPoint decks, right? If you stay at the PowerPoint level, just dreaming about ideas are cheap. There's so many ideas in the
Yes,
world. But
for
getting
sure.
into market as fast as you can, because there's so much learning that you will
Mhm.
get once you are actually either selling the product to a customer, or getting your website up, or creating this service and feedback loop. So you have to get there, instead of just ruminating on your magical idea. So I think that's my take on entrepreneurship.
Rudy, you started two ventures during the lockdown, okay,
Yes,
during the crisis. One is a mental health app, and the other is e-commerce for dogs.
yes.
So, from the 30 ideas that you had, why those two? Applying the principles that you just
Yes.
enumerated, why those two spaces?
So when we started, I think mental health has always been something I'm very interested in,
Mm-hmm.
personally. I've gone through hard times, and I had to work with professionals to help me. So I know how debilitating it could be. And when you read
Mm-hmm.
around, especially the younger generation, Gen Z,
Mm-hmm.
millennials, are the stigma for mental health is decreasing. So I'm Gen X, right? I'm 41 this year. So in my generation, it's not talked about, especially the older generation. But now it's quite considered to be normal to talk about mental health. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I feel like, okay, there's a problem there. But with COVID-19, it has become an urgent, very, very timely problem. So in the list of opportunity spaces, that stood out as, okay, we have to do this first. So when we decided as a company to invest more resources, that was March
Mm-hmm.
12th. In 2 weeks, we have a paying customer. We have two
Wow.
companies
Okay.
already that are working with us. We already acquired a network of experts. So what we do
Mm-hmm.
is we talk to companies and say, okay, do you have a mental wellness program? We can help you. Because HR, for example, has so many things they have to do now because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown. Sometimes they just need a mental health partner. So what we establish, we run webinars for them. We provide online counseling sessions for employees. So it's quite simple, right? So HR, we can
Mm-hmm.
plug and play in 2 days. You can
Mm-hmm.
already run a mental health webinar on managing stress and anxiety through COVID-19, and allow employees to take up a counseling session if they need it, right? So it's quite simple. As a service, simple. We started working with companies, and you know what? In our sales cycle, an average from our first meeting to getting them signed is 7 days, right?
7 days.
7 days. I've
That's
tracked
pretty
it.
fast. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just because the service is simple, it's not innovative, right? It's not a new thing. You don't have to have a new idea to be an entrepreneur, right? I
Mm-hmm.
love what Eric Katwani has just said. Think about value. What do they need? And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be, something that is super out of this world, innovative. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
something that they need and what they value. So for us, we can work with companies, right? So we started working with companies, and it ranges from aviation industry, which is hardly hit by the pandemic, to business process outsourcing companies, to tech companies, right? And then we just launched for B2C, so individuals who just need counseling sessions, and I can provide a discount code for those that have attended this. So now we started it so that anyone who's not even in a company can just go to our site and get a counselor, because everyone needs help. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one. The other was on e-commerce. We've always felt that there is a space there to create a more direct to consumer business. So I've come from a fast moving consumer goods background, branded goods. The issue with how the FMCG market is let's say I used to handle Oreo cookies for Asia Pacific. It's such a fun
Ooh.
brand.
Oh,
but
it
you
is.
sell it, yeah, right? So you
Mm-hmm,
sell Oreo cookies through a supermarket, right? The issue for
mm-hmm,
that is you don't own the data. You
mm-hmm,
don't know customers because you sell
mm-hmm.
through a channel. So we were
Right.
thinking maybe the future of consumer goods is more direct to consumer, right?
Mm-hmm,
And then we established an e-commerce site to know more about how people behave and purchase things online. So that's why we started with the name of the company is Dog's Choice. So now we're learning a lot about how people purchase products within e-commerce sites, and if the opportunity arises that we can start our own brand, that's something in our mind. But getting into market was from our decision. I think it just took us 4 weeks. So now we
mm-hmm,
have a lot of transactions. We're still learning. I'm not saying that we're
mm-hmm.
uber successful, but I think we are gonna get there.
Right. Thanks, Rudy. Very insightful. Very, very insightful. Okay, let's move on to Chicago. Adrian, as an entrepreneur and a business person, how do you recognize opportunities and how do you act on them?
Well, let's see. Really quickly, I do want to say, Rudy, something that you said, it really resonates deeply with me in terms of, ideas are a dime a dozen, right?
Mm-hmm,
So, anybody can come up with an idea. It's about implementation. That's where the
mm-hmm,
magic is. That's where you make your money.
mm-hmm,
For me, that's how I've always approached things. And for those of you who don't know me on this call, I've been a business owner. I've been a business owner for 10 years now, and I've owned multiple companies in different industries. I like to I maneuver in and out, and I consider myself a business chameleon, if you will. Strategy never gets old, operations never gets old, and development never gets old. So
mm-hmm,
those are my strong suits. So Rudy, when you were talking about getting into market as fast as you can, because you can strategize and you can think about an idea forever. Um,
Yeah,
but until you actually take it to market, you don't know what is wrong with that idea or the
sure.
things that you need to tweak and turn around. So,
Yep.
and actually, Erica Aquino can attest to this. One of my mantras that I run business by and I live by is, go fast, break things.
Yep.
Right? We,
mm-hmm.
you, you, we're gonna figure it out along the way.
Uh,
But the fact of the
for
matter is,
sure.
I can't figure out the big problems if I haven't started yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
We,
fully agree.
we can be at a table for 3 hours talking about what can go wrong. And I guarantee you, once we go to market and we
It's
hit
gonna
that first week, that first month of being in the market, there's going to be 20 problems that we didn't foresee in that 3 hour of brainstorming.
For sure.
yeah.
For
Also,
sure.
Adrian, let me respond as well. I fully agree with what you said. We in our ventures we have these milestones that we have created. One of my team members, Anne, who is actually listening in this call, shared this to me. It's always like getting to your first 10, getting your to first 100, getting to your first 1,000.
Mhm.
So there are different issues that arise. So if you just
Mm-hmm,
put these milestones, right? For us, we just got to our 10 companies that we work with. From 10 to 100, it's going to be a different challenge. From 100 to 1,000, it's going to be different. So I think it's interesting for me personally. Like I'm actually fascinated. When you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes it's not scaled yet. So there's a
mm-hmm,
different problem to actually scaling it from a 10 to 100 or 100 to 1,000. So
mm-hmm,
Yeah, thank you for adding that, Rudy. So for like me, I look at it, when all this happened, um, right now, I would say I was in shock for about, I don't know, maybe 2 days. And then so it wasn't long. It wasn't long before I started to look at things, and I recognized that, as an entrepreneur, I can stay shocked for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and kind of just roll with the punches. Or,
mm-hmm,
as Ms. Twani said earlier, understand that just because the people around me or certain companies aren't making money, that doesn't mean nobody's making money. Somebody's making money, right? So, what's the idea that we can come up with in order to get another idea, another business? How can we get funding, things of that nature? So for me, I looked at it as an opportunity to say, hey, we mentioned this earlier in the conversation. Money is the byproduct of the idea, correct? So this is a perfect opportunity while people are still and relatively stagnant to put our ideas to market. Whether or not we get paid, that doesn't matter. I mean, as entrepreneurs, most of us have reserves, things of that nature. So I didn't need to depend on that. What I'm looking at the situation right now is testing products, testing ideas, connecting. So how can I, while everybody else is kind of on the side thinking about things, how can we put things to market and see if they work during a time when it's really low risk to us, right? So, with everybody shut down, I can go, we can try 13 different ideas. And if they don't work, guess what? We didn't lose much.
Yes.
So, so I think that was great in terms of you, Rudi, saying, hey, I'm going to start two right now. I'm going to go ahead and start 2 companies. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Yeah. Right. And now by the time everything's over, you're going to have a well-established 2 new brands. Right. While everybody else was kind of just like, man, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of shell shocked. My company's not paying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, back to Erica Twani's point, as an entrepreneur, it's up to us to recognize these opportunities. Yeah. And one of our biggest strengths as entrepreneurs is not the ideation, but the implementation. Yes. So if you ask me, are there opportunities right now? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are a ton of them. And like any other thing, if anything, I think this is one of the best times for an entrepreneur to test their ideas out. Yep. I mean, again, low risk, high reward at this point. So, what do you really have to lose? And then specifically for me, I'll throw in a quick story, if you will, and a very specific example. So for one of our government contracts is with the federal government. So, we have to provide interns for different federal organizations, right? So as a small business, we're consistently going up against, how many career fairs can we attend? How many universities can we develop relationships with face-to-face? How many people can we meet with on a daily basis? How many people are going to have time to get on a call with us and to help develop a pipeline? Well, guess what? As a small business, we were competing against teams with 50, 100 people that can go out there and make these calls and make these face-to-face initiatives. Well, guess what? Now that nobody's traveling, I'm on a level playing field.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm on a level playing field now. So my company of, 10 to 15, I can compete directly with the bigger companies because nobody's traveling, nobody's face-to-face. Now it's all off of relationships and technology.
Yep.
So, when you're asking me about opportunities, this was a great opportunity for me because now it gave us an opportunity. It gave us the realization that we can leverage opportunity to become bigger than we are, right? And that's the beauty of technology. And I think both Rudi and Erica Twani have really touched on that aspect. And I just want to reinforce that idea that, with tech entrepreneurship, some of the biggest tech companies started out 1-2 people, right? Some of the biggest companies, period, started out 1-2 people. And, with technology, I can have the same impact as having a staff of 50 to 100, as long as we're leveraging it correctly and we're using awesome programs like Rudi's and Erica Twani's, right?
Of course.
So,
no, I want to just add one point because we talk about tech entrepreneurship. So my background, I have a tech background in Google, but I don't code, right? So I'm a non-tech tech startup founder, and a lot of people are so afraid to start tech startups just because they don't code. And I think that there are now a lot of no code softwares. If you can build a website yourself, you don't need to know how to code. You can build an app yourself, you don't need how to code. But the coding part, I think, is the least of your problems because there's a lot of people who can do the code for you. I think so the idea is important, the go-to-market is important, building a team is important. So tech entrepreneurship does not have to be with the Mark Zuckerbergs or the Larry Pages, right? It's great that they could code, but the founders of Airbnb could not code at all. So I think tech entrepreneurship does not have to be only for those that can build software. It can be for people who just love to create new products, right? Or who can tap into an existing opportunity or has knowledge about a specific opportunity space. So I think that's just one point I want to get across.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rudy. Thank you for that. You know, a lot of people think they hear tech and the first thing that comes to mind is coding, right? So I can't get into tech if I can't code, or I didn't get into computer engineering, computer science. Well, I can run a business though. Right? So well, I think that's a great really starting point for us, and thank you, thank you both for answering that question. I do want to shift into the second question, and I think it's a very important question. We've touched on it here and there, but I want us to really delve deep into it. And again, for our audience and our participants, the chat box is active. I know I have some activity on Facebook, so we'll get there as well. But Erica Twani, if we can head over to you in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right? The next question: do you think it's a good time to start a business or to sell to people? Why or why not?
Well, Rudy just started 2 companies. I believe that the panel already answered that question. You know, that we have a real example here of 2 companies getting started. We have another example of you, Adrian, said somebody's buying something, so let's go out there and sell. And myself repackaging products and services to make sure that we are bringing value to the customer. Of course, this is time. Imagine now, if you know any teacher around the world, everybody's desperate. No, very few teachers have experience with tech products and dealing with all these students at home, and how do I make sure the students are learning, and now how do I assess the students, and testing, and how's that gonna happen? I'm used to my school. I used to go to the morning every morning. My kids are there, and now nobody's there. Somebody needs to buy something. They need our help. They need the support that they have no idea what to do. And I'm talking about, in my case, but there's many different cases. People need to go to the supermarket. Older people need help to go to the supermarket. How about walking the dogs? How about, what's going to happen with walking the dogs if you cannot go out anymore? So entrepreneurship is solving problems to people, bringing value to people. So if you think about it, and you observe what's going on around you, you eventually find something that is of value, and people will buy.
I think one thing that comes to mind, that's the way as entrepreneurs, right? We see that that mindset, if you will, and that value. But I think that one thing that comes to mind, I think of, is sometimes, if people aren't entrepreneurs, they see it as an ethical dilemma, right? What you explained right now was the way it should have been explained, right? We're talking about dog walking, helping the elderly, things of that, mental health, e-learning, right? We're all in very people-oriented businesses, correct? But however, there's other people that are thinking in terms of ethics. Corporations are taking advantage of certain situations like this, right? So I think that when you put it that way, that's how we like to answer the question. That's how most people like to perceive it, right? These are things that people are going to need either way. So how can we bring it to market, if you will?
Might as well be buying from us.
Yes. Yeah, because if you
For sure.
offer a
Yeah.
quality service or product, there's really no shame in that. I mean, for me, that's a mentality that I have, right? You're not
Mm-hmm.
shortchanging the delivery of anything,
Mm-hmm.
and because you
Mm-hmm.
want a sustainable business. If you're just after a quick buck, maybe there are entrepreneurs like that. That's just not my style. I want something sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for instance, last weekend, my husband and I were debating because now we have to work from home, right? And we need new furniture at home. So
Yeah.
where are we gonna go? We need to buy furniture, and we need it. We need a new material. We need a new screen. So
Mm-hmm.
those things are necessary.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna be buying from somebody.
Yeah.
Why not
Mm-hmm.
you and you and you?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I also look at it, right? Like a lot of a lot of people who weren't, who didn't consider themselves entrepreneurs before, now they're looking, and I'll be very specific in like what I've been seeing, like food delivery, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
food delivery or mask making or
Mm-hmm.
art design, right? Painting.
Mm-hmm.
People are now becoming painters online and teaching courses on how to paint because people have
Oh
time
yeah.
on their hands, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, people are now, being thrust into entrepreneurship and they didn't even realize it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and now you think of Amazon, right? And Amazon is booming because everybody's staying home. However,
Mm-hmm.
now you look at these smaller companies, or these smaller businesses in the cities, and now they're offering to deliver things, right? Now they're offering to
Mm-hmm.
deliver their food. Now they're offering to cater, and it's so interesting to see how entrepreneurship is shifting during this time, as well
Yeah.
as business, right? And starting businesses, and a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
companies didn't think they could start businesses before.
Right. And for me personally, right? So I've always been with consumer marketing, right? So most of my
Mm-hmm.
career is almost 15 years selling mass products to consumers, whether it's cooking aid or
Or
biscuits.
Oreo.
And with COVID, yeah, Oreo, with COVID-19 and the lockdown, you really have behaviors that have changed during the period, but there are behaviors that will completely change,
Mm-hmm.
right? That after experiencing what we have experienced, there will really be behavioral change. And this is the perfect time for entrepreneurship because new opportunities will emerge. With these behavioral changes, the behemoths, the big companies, might be too slow to get to that. They're still on
Mm-hmm.
protective, defensive mode, while you, as an entrepreneur, for example, you can already tap into it. I hear myself. So
It's the
yeah,
connection.
I think
Yeah.
that's the perfect time for entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Miss Aquino, talk to us.
Yes.
Give us your thoughts.
Well, okay. Is it a good time to sell or start a business? Look, these two wonderful panelists said absolutely, and I would have to agree with them. First of all, if it's a wrong time to sell, why are people buying so much toilet paper? Okay.
There too? In Manila
Not here,
too?
not here so much.
Everywhere.
Not here so much. But
Sorry,
Okay.
it's the same.
those are my thoughts behind it. If you provide value, as Erica Twani said, if you provide value, if you provide, a service that people will need and are willing to pay for, then absolutely. I've also, just on another note, uh, the local messenger app here, Viber, that's really popular. We have now marketplaces in which micro entrepreneurs are selling their stuff, anything from food to school supplies to face masks to just basically things that they need at home. I recently bought, oh God, what did I buy? I bought almost everything, I think, off these Viber marketplaces, fruits, vegetables, etc. Um, uh, Big dealers have pivoted. For instance, there is a bread company, a bakery that had to shut down its operations because it's mostly supplied to hotels and restaurants who aren't, purchasing as much. So what did they do? They empowered the micro entrepreneur by making them dealers of their bread in their villages. So there are all these people now selling, making money selling bread to people who may not necessarily want to make bread of their own, which seems to be the quarantine food of the chosen quarantine food. They're making money. Everybody's making money, and everybody's fed. Everybody's happy. I think as long as you provide value, as long as you make sure that you are to call on previous panels, you are speaking with an authentic voice, with some sincerity. You're not off to make a quick buck. You are solving a problem. You are providing a solution. You are speaking to the customer, knowing what they want and anticipating what they want. Then absolutely, you should start a business. You should sell your product. And nothing is. I also believe that people are very much willing to help out their community. They're very much willing to help out small businesses. So what do you have to lose? We are in the middle of something big, and there is a saying, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that may apply here, and in the 2008 crisis as well. Some of the bigger companies were born out of it. Some of the bigger unicorns globally were born out of it. So yeah, let's jump on the opportunity while it's there.
Awesome.
Yes, just one thing, Adrian. So a friend of mine in Argentina, he has a online travel company, right? And then with all this crisis, nobody's traveling now. So they redirected their online travel company to give tips for people to buy things for at home while they're in quarantine, right? So cheese and wine and food this and that supermarket has some discounts. So they became the Amazon of the country because everybody wanted to sell through them. So imagine this, a online travel company that used to sell something that decided to bring value to their customers while at home for free, no cost. Here are some tips that you can buy, things you can buy, to the point that those vendors decided to sell things through their website. And now they're selling a bunch of other things. They expanded the business and they have grown 15 times in this crisis, just in a few months.
So they were able to utilize their database that they had already.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That's incredible.
That's bringing value.
Absolutely,
for sure.
All right, so what we're gonna do really quickly is I'm gonna take. I have been getting some questions, so I'm gonna take one question really quick, out of respect for time. This question comes from Ashley Delgado. How different do you think education will be after this pandemic plateau is over? What are some key takeaways that we have learned with education now that will be beneficial in the future? We got some education. We got some education people on here.
we have three people that can answer that question right here. I can get started, so you guys can fill it in. I do believe. So let me get to a story first. So many years ago, when I was in college, actually Berkeley, doing a postgraduate degree, I had a macroeconomics professor, and this professor used to say that, nature takes care of itself. So crisis and events, nature events, come to shake us and to make sure that we shift towards something that is going to be good for all of us as the human beings, as a society in general, right? So COVID-19 made me remember him so many years ago, because now what COVID is doing is shaking us so bad, especially on the field of education, that we have the same system for the last 200 years. That doesn't make sense. It's like, it will be like riding horses to go someplace, since like 200 years ago. So it's time to change. It's time to do something new. That's one. The second thing is that education system, like any other industries, won't be the same anymore. So you'll see something like, hybrid systems, like kids going to school, one group going on Monday and Wednesdays and other group going Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you're going to see crazy things happening, more technology, more apps, and more this and more that. And so it won't be the same anymore. And it's not like, we'll come up with a vaccine and everything will be solved. It's not going to happen. COVID is here forever. It will come back every season, right? So we'll have to deal with this at all times. It will be less people dying, but, we'll still have it. So it's going to happen. So this is a great opportunity for us right now, for education systems around the world, to take that big step, because now there's no resistance. Everybody's opened, and it's time to innovate. It's a great opportunity to move forward with things like, here in the United States, there are some states that are moving towards very innovative approaches, and I'm the first one to a big supporter of that, and I do hope that it happens faster, sooner than later.
I agree.
I agree. Could I add to that? Yeah. Could I add to that? Yeah. So here's what I want. Here's what I want to happen. Here's what I hope to happen to education moving forward. Right. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, now is the time for better collaboration among all parties, whether it's a tech company, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's the government, big corporations, even the small local governments. So there should be coordination in the sense that, okay, can big corporations or big tech companies provide one gadget per child, so that even the kids from far-flung villages can get access to the internet? Because right now the internet is a basic fundamental human right. Okay. 2, can telco companies get their act together and basically, provide at least cheap, affordable internet access? Could they even get better signal in the mountain areas, in the, in islands across the world? Can they do that? 3, can people like Erica Twani or the best teachers in the world, professors from the best universities around the world, can they provide cheap, accessible content and engaging content, so that kids, learners of all ages can have fun while learning? Learning isn't about filling a vessel, but rather igniting a fire. And right now, in the developing countries, at least, that isn't happening. It's still very much what I call a Google-based education. Basically, everything that they teach us, we can Google. Okay, and that shouldn't happen anymore. And I think now is the opportunity to create a more problem-solving oriented type of education system, an education system that kind of encourages critical thinking. So I hope that's what happens, and yeah, we're working on that as well on our end.
Yeah, but one thing that I would like to add here is to make sure that we, and that's something that I talk a lot about in my book, my upcoming book. It is, let's not wait until we have external resources to make kids successful. It's all about what they already have. They have a brain. And if we work that brain, and if we could make the right connection, generate intrinsic motivation with those children, whether they have tech or not, they'll be successful. Of course, technology accelerates the rate of success. However, we work with many schools that has no resources, like no books, no computers. They're in the middle of nowhere, and they are A+ schools. So how can we do that? It's because we start from the child. And if you want to learn more, you have to read the book.
I will read the book. Erica Twani.
Me too. It's so interesting.
I will totally. It's so interesting. I'd really love
You've sold it to me.
I'd love to find out. Yeah. I'd love to find out more, and I'd love to speak to you more.
We'll send the link out in the following newsletter so that everybody can have the link to Erica Twani's book and website. So before I begin to wrap it up, and I'll ask each panelist after this to give their closing remarks. But before that, I do want to say this, to answer or to touch on that question. What I've seen from a logistics point of view in terms of education and how things are going to be different, well, again, Erica Twani touched on some of the stuff being, severely outdated. But I think specifically from a logistical point of view, how does this change? Well, what have we seen? We've seen every single teacher in the United States of America have to learn how to teach online. If you look, 5, 10, 15 years ago, 10% of courses were offered online, right? 10, 15% of courses were offered online. Why did it take us this, and now 100% of courses have to be offered online, right? So, why did it take us this long to understand that technology needed to be utilized and leveraged at a much deeper and higher level? You have the teachers that are, to Rudi's point, that are millennials, maybe even, Gen X as well. But then you start getting into tenured teachers who are boomers and things of that nature, who are having trouble adapting to the system, right? And let's not give millennials and Gen X's, all the clout, because they're having a hard time adjusting as well. But my thing is, from a logistical and operation / back-end point of view, why weren't we as a system preparing for this 15 years ago? And we could go deep into it in another time, but these are opportunities for the states to save money, the countries to save money, right? There's a ton of ways we can leverage and become a lot leaner with online learning, and it hadn't been utilized at all up until now. So I think that when we're talking about this whole plateauing of education and information, we look directly at education and how it's gone online, but now businesses have gone online, right? Yeah. Every single business now has to have had pivoted towards an online structure for what it is. Whether or not they remain that way is neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, now every single business has to include in their business model a virtual component.
Yep.
So, ultimately that shifts not just from education, but to business as well. So, again, Ashley Delgado, thank you very much for asking that question. It clearly piqued a lot of our interest over here on the panel. So thank you for that. So in respect for everybody's time, I would love for the panelists, for everybody to give some closing remarks. And I will start with Mr. Rudi.
Yeah, thanks. I learned a lot. Thank you very much, Erica, and Adrian. For me, this time that we are in, there are two options for us. We can treat it as a threat, or we can treat it as an opportunity. And you know what? For me personally, sometimes it's a threat. Sometimes, some days I wake up, it just doesn't feel right. But sometimes I feel good, and that's okay, right? It's just that we are going through a tough time. But if I would like look at it as an opportunity. There are a lot of opportunities that we can do. And I think if we unshackle ourselves and to think about how to defend our way of life before, but look at how we can improve our life, that's a great space to be in. And the other point I want to make is, tech entrepreneurship is for everyone. Technology is a great enabler, a great disruptor, and a great way to also solve a lot of pain points. And as I've mentioned, you don't need to be an engineer to be a tech entrepreneur. You just need, to be resourceful, which is the core value of an entrepreneur. So I think I love what I've been hearing in the past like 60 minutes. I've learned a lot as entrepreneur, and it's thank you very much for inviting me to this panel.
Mr. Rudi, it's been awesome. Been awesome to share with you as well. Ms. Twani, please.
Thank you, guys. And I would like to, I had in mind to discuss something like Rudi said. It's about and we talk about the greatness of entrepreneurship, but we also have some bad days, and sometimes it's just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I crazy? And that's going to happen to you too. Whomever is listening to this, it's going to happen. I mean, if it is not happening already, if you're already an entrepreneur, but if you have your goal in mind and you observe yourself, that's an exercise here that I personally do. I observe what I'm feeling as an outsider, as if I were an observer right here, looking at me and seeing what I'm feeling and what I'm saying. And I make myself look back into the main goal and look around the strategy and make sure that, in plain English, I put my shit together. So just breathe deeply, make sure you observe how you feel, what you're thinking, and move forward. Those bad days will come.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate you. Mr. Kino, talk to us.
Closing remarks. Okay. Yes, what they said. Seriously, there will be highs when you hit your milestones. There will be lows when you're like pulling your hair out and wondering, is this all worth it? And maybe curled up on the floor, literally, or you're getting down on your hands and knees, packing products or shipping them out yourself. Entrepreneurship is not glamorous at all, but it's absolutely worth it. And going back to Ashley's question, with the 4 people here that I see on my screen right now, there is an opportunity again, and for those watching, there is an opportunity that was brought up, and I don't know if you see it, but it's there. And opportunities are always around us. It's really just up to us to act on them, and it's up to us to implement our ideas and implement them well. And I wish everybody all the best in this wonderful journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. And for me, I just want to say thank you to everybody for adding value to the conversation, adding value to me personally. And one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation is I have two very, very specific takeaways. Is we can talk and we can talk and we can talk, or we can act. Right? And when I see things and I see opportunities and I see time going by, that doesn't sit well with me. So if there's anything that I can provide in terms of value, it's to, I'd rather fail at something that's my creation than succeed in something that I'm not passionate about. So, I look at this opportunity, and then I look at in terms of again, I just keep on going back to what Rudi says in terms of, you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be able to code in order to be an entrepreneur in tech. And there's a lot of people who are, able to make money who don't know a thing about engineering, coding, technology, things of that nature, but they can run a business. They have strong work ethic. They're dedicated and they have drive. Do I know a lot of people who have that? I do. So, if that's something that I had to share and that I had to really take away from this conversation is, let's not be scared by terms. Let's not be scared by titles. Let's not be scared by missed opportunities, right? Again, we spoke it today. There's opportunities all over the place, but if you don't act on them, you're always going to sit in that one little place where you say, damn, maybe I should have 10 years ago. Maybe I should have 7 years ago. So, I appreciate everybody on this panel for allowing that to come to fruition for me. So, the Global Innovation Panel is something that we started about 2 months ago. We've had some phenomenal people on. Erica Twani, Rudi, you guys have added tremendous value. Thank you for what you've brought to us. Thank you for what you've brought to our audience and your audience as well. All that we ask is that you continue to spread the word, because I feel very deep that these are conversations that we need to continue having that are extremely relevant to not just people, but also our economy and our entrepreneur economy, our ideation economy, our strategic biosphere. These are things that we need to continue working with each other from across the world to understand how you're running business. How are you solving problems? But better yet, how do we solve problems? So with that said, thank you everybody for your time, and you will be receiving a newsletter from us within the next couple of days with the information from our panelists and the links. And if you want to get in contact with them, we will include their websites and whatnot, and you can go from there.
Yes.
Sounds good?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a good day,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Rudi.
Thanks, guys.
Erica.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah. I got it. I'm going to end it. Just call back in.
Yeah.